You may not know this, but Rick and I are twin brothers from different mothers. So, yeah, we actually were born in the very same hospital in downtown San Diego. So, we do have that connection. And this church really is unusual because I get to work with lots of different churches. I do a thing called Jumpstart Ministries. It's just me, but I help churches get their youth ministries up and running. Or I do assessments, or I help them find their next youth pastor or train their rookie youth pastor, that kind of thing. So I get to see lots of different churches. And I have to tell you that not very many churches invest very much into their youth ministry. And there's a good reason for that. Teenagers don't pay the bills. In fact, they cost more than they produce. And so most churches put their efforts in the areas where it's going to pay the bills and help make them look successful. But as you've heard, this church is different. In fact, I remember when Rick first had the idea of starting a church out of a youth ministry. We didn't think it was going to work. All of us youth guys who thought, there's no way this is going to work. Obviously it did, because this church is different. And it has become a model for the kind of intentional, creative ministry that I wish more churches could emulate. And Rick's right, I do consider this my home church, even though I live a bazillion miles away, 5 hours time difference away. I still consider this, and I watch the sermons and online after they happen, because they happen in the middle of the afternoon for me. That kind of thing. So this church is committed to teenagers. And I thought, what do you think of teenagers? What's your attitude toward them? Or what does Jesus think of teenagers? Let's imagine that you and he were to be strolling along the corridor of your local high school right as class was letting out for lunch. What would he see? What would he feel? And how would he respond? I think we have a clue about that in the book of Matthew, Matthew chapter 9, verse 36 through 38. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So pray, ask the Lord of the harvest that he would send out laborers into his harvest field." So let's unpack this little incident in the life of Jesus and see what we can figure out. What would he see when he saw a ton of teenagers streaming out of those classrooms heading to lunch? What would he see? When he saw the crowds is the phrase that we're looking at. And we know that from other places in Scripture, when Jesus saw a ton of people, he did not see just a ton of people. He saw individuals. He would be walking down the road with a whole parade behind him and stop and talk to a guy sitting in the tree just so he could watch and say, "Hey, let's go have lunch." When people were pressing all around him, a lady who had a lifelong illness touched his garment and was instantly healed. And Jesus said, hey, what happened? And Peter goes, "Come on, there's a ton of people here." He says, "Oh, no, there's somebody that needed something." So we know that when he saw crowds, he saw individuals. So when he would see these kids streaming out of class going to the cafeteria, he would see individual kids. Now we tend to group them into their different types. You got the skaters and the ropers and the dopers and the Klingons. Those are the guy-girl couples that seem to be glued together. And the band nerds and the gamers and the choir people and the athletes and the stoners, and get the idea. We tend to group them, but he sees individuals. When he saw the crowds, he saw people. So what did he feel when he saw all these kids? Well, the next phrase is, he had compassion on them. What would he feel? He would not feel naive. He would not feel, my, look at this, all these wonderful teenagers, the future of our country, aren't they wonderful kids? No, he was more realistic than that. And he wouldn't be like intimidated or hostile. He would not, like, what's wrong with these kids today? Look, can't they even tie their shoes? I mean, they can't pull up your pants, please, that kind of thing. He just, he was not that hostile to him. He not naive, not hostile. He was not intimidated by anybody. In fact, the Pharisees said, hey, we know that you defer to no person. He felt compassion. He felt this from the inside out clench. That's what the word compassion means, from the bowels, actually. My wife has a phrase that she says when she sees somebody with a hurt, she goes, ooh, that makes my stomach hurt. It's that clench that happens right in here. When you see something that makes you go, ooh, That's the basis of the word compassion. He felt compassion on them. I got to pull this up. My eyes aren't what they used to be. He felt compassion on them because... well, let me finish the word. The word compassion means like this clench from the bowels and an almost panic to do something about the situation. Yesterday, Rick asked the youth leaders, he was kind of doing a mock Sunday school lesson with them, and he says, have you ever been the first one? Have you ever seen an accident on the road? And a bunch of us had. Have you ever been the first one to that accident? And I had that experience. I was coming down the mountains from Yosemite area. I spoke at a middle school weekend retreat, and I had my daughter Megan. She was in 6th grade. And we were driving down this long, windy, single-lane each-way road out of Yosemite going toward Fresno. And a white pickup truck just went flying by me. And I went, oh, man, you're going to slow down. He didn't know how to drive Kauai style. And right after him was this young guy in a Camaro. And so as we went down, we got to a straight stretch, and the Camaro guy wanted to pass the pickup guy, but the pickup guy right at that time also wanted to pass the car in front of him, and so the Camaro clipped the pickup, and the pickup started flipping into the ditch next to the road, this big culvert thing with big granite boulders, and wound up sitting upside down with its wheels spinning, and I'm seeing all this happen right in front of me. I slammed on my brakes. I pulled over to the side. Megan had just fallen asleep. She says, what? And I says, oh, man, Megan, I just saw somebody die. And I flew out of my car, ran to that pickup truck. I'm thinking every action movie story thing that you've ever seen, where you pull the people out and then the truck explodes, that kind of deal. There are 3 people in the truck, and the man, the wife, the little girl, hanging upside down by their seatbelts. And we got them out, and Megan took care of occupied this small child. But I don't remember looking to see if there was a car coming when I ran across that little highway to go to that truck. I was in a panic to do something about this. That's what Jesus would feel. His great heart would heave when he saw these kids, and he saw all the needs, and he saw all the pain, and he saw all the potential, and he would feel almost in a panic to do something about it. That's what he would feel. So why would he feel that way? Why such emotion when he would see all these teenagers? Well, the next phrase, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. That's a mouthful. If that's a great way to describe today's teenagers, I can't think of a better example. They're harassed. Harassed is a word that means to be bullied and oppressed, to be taken advantage of, to be irritated, or to be targeted and used for somebody else's benefit. Harassed. Harassed is a good way to describe what a lot of our kids today experience. We live in a postmodern, post-Christian world where our kids are being bombarded with messages of anything but God. of materialism, of sensuality, of relativism, of humanism, of all the isms that are not quite what God had us designed to live by. That's what they're being bombarded by. They're harassed. And adults, if you were a pagan teenager in 2020, you would be a pagan teenager in 2020. You would be angry, you would be joyful, you would have the whole world at your fingertips and have tons of online friends and still feel unsatisfied and alone. You would do drugs, most likely. You would not be a virgin, and you would not know how to get back to God. You would not know. Harassed and helpless, which means they were not equipped to deal with what they're having to deal with. They don't have the resources. One summer I was speaking at a high school summer camp up in the Sierras, and I was playing ping pong with some guys as all the buses were rolling in. And you know, if you've ever been to summer camp, that's like a big deal because all the kids unload out of the buses, get their sleeping bags and their luggage, and head off to their cabins trying to figure out who's going to sleep in which bunk and how come I couldn't get into that cabin with my friend and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And so I'm playing ping pong with a bunch of guys who had already gone through that situation. And they were asking me, so Ken, are you going to go to the hike to Indian Head on Friday? Now, I've been in youth ministry long enough to know that if you want to stay young, work with young people. And if you want to die young, try to keep up with them. So I waffled. I said, yeah, I don't know. You know, they explained, you know, hey, it's an awesome thing. We go for like 3.5 hours down this trail, and there's this huge rock that we click out on the top of. It looks like an Indian head, and you got to go, you got to go. And all week long, they pestered me about this. I was harassed. So Friday comes after lunch. We all meet at the flagpole, and off we go down the trail to Indian Head. I succumbed to the harassment. And I stayed toward the end. I mean, the freshman guys start running down the trail. I'm thinking, yeah, you're going to run for 3.5 miles at 8,000-foot elevation. You go for it. You know, so I'll stay back here with the girls just to make sure they have no trouble, right? So it was a gnarly hike. I mean, we really covered some ground. And the last, like, half hour of that hike was us leaping from boulder to boulder up this rock fall that had come down off of this huge monolith of rock that we were going to climb up around behind and get on top of and go, woo, we did it. As I got closer, I noticed that one of the high school guys, his name was Todd, from Citrus Heights, California, was climbing the face of Indian Head, straight up. All he had was shorts, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes. No carabiners and ropes and spikes and, you know, the powder they use and all that kind of stuff. He was just trying to show off for his camp romance girlfriend. You know, one of those 5-day wonder things. So I thought, stupid kid, and I kept coming closer and closer. As I got closer, the girlfriend standing at the foot of the cliff going, kid, get up here, we're in trouble. So I got up there, and I looked, and Todd had gotten himself onto a spot in the rock that was covered with that black lichen stuff, you know, that like dry, crumbly. And he had gotten to a place where he could no longer go up and he couldn't come down. And all that was holding him to the face of the rock were 3 fingers on each hand on a little tiny, little crevice thing. And girlfriend says, do something. I'm not a rock climber. I didn't even want to go on this hike. Do something? So I told her to quit crying and start praying. I said a quick prayer saying, Lord, help me here. And Todd is saying, Ken, hurry up. I don't know how much longer. So I, scramble. And I get up right behind him and below him, and I start encountering that black lichen myself. And I freaked out. I mean, I chickened out is what I did. I then backed down around onto a little ledge that if I was like, LeBron James, I could have just jumped up and grabbed him and pulled him off. He was that close. And I didn't know what to do. And he's holding himself on his feet or clawing at the rock. You could see the tendons in his forearms standing out. You could hear the fear coming up in his voice. He says, Ken, do something. And I was helpless. He was helpless. That's what Jesus sees teenagers like. They're harassed, helpless. Luckily, just then, Bob, one of the leaders, comes up out of the forest. Now the girlfriend and I are going, Bob, get up here, we have trouble. He gets and stands where I'm standing. He goes, no problem, I'm a rock climber. And in about a third of the time it took me, he just got right to where I was. And then he starts talking to Todd, says, Todd, I'm going to tell you what to do. You got to do exactly what I say. Okay, just hurry. He says, when I count to 3, I want you to flatten yourself on the rock and slide down. He goes, slide down? I said, slide down? Girlfriend says, slide down? All I can think of is Todd sliding into Bob and the two of them falling down and seeing Jesus. He goes, yeah, just trust me. So he starts counting 3. I'm going, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. 2, oh please, 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 please. 1, Todd flattens, slides down. Bob does like a push-up on the rock. Todd slides right between them. Then he clamps him to the rock with his body. They do that 2 or 3 more times, get down to where I'm standing, and then I take Todd's head off and show it to him. But today's kids are helpless to deal with the world they live in, with all the pressures and all the temptations and all the opportunities that they have to face. And often we are helpless to do anything about it as well. Harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. They're stressed, they're defenseless, sheep without a shepherd, which is really a good way to describe teenagers, because sheep are not very smart. When was the last time you saw a sheep in the circus? I mean, the sheep are so dumb that if the shade moves, they don't know where it went. If they sleep in a different place where they slept last night, they don't know where the food is. They forgot where they got their drink. They need somebody to shepherd them, to provide for them. Today's American teenager doesn't know where to find help, where to find meaning, where to find purpose, where to find strength to handle their things. They're like sheep without a shepherd, and we need shepherds. So that's what Jesus why he would feel compassion for these kids. So how would he respond? The next phrase is this. He turned to his disciples and said, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out laborers into his harvest field. So here's some things we can think of about that. First off, there's nothing wrong with the harvest. Their problems are not with the kids. The harvest is plentiful. Problem is that there's not enough laborers in his harvest field. And that's really true of most churches. There are not enough youth leaders to handle the kids that they have now, let alone any kids that they might develop. Because what happens is ministry happens person to person, not program to person. We can't create programs that'll help kids. We create programs that'll allow us to get next to kids and have a relationship with them and influence their lives to live for Christ. We are looking for, so the harvest is his, and there's nothing wrong with the harvest, but there aren't enough youth workers. So he says, ask the Lord of the harvest. So pray. Ministry is a spiritual endeavor, and the first thing that I tend to think of when I see a shortage or a need is, okay, let's get together a task force and let's form some ideas and let's get together some issues that we can work on and solve this problem. But that's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, so ask the Lord of the harvest. It's kind of backwards from the way we normally think, but prayer is powerful in spiritual endeavors. So pray that the Lord would send out laborers. So pray the Lord would send out. That word send out is actually kick into play, thrust out laborers into his harvest field. And that's pretty much how I got involved in youth ministry. It was not my choice. It was God's. Maybe God has you in mind as somebody who might be one of the laborers in this harvest field. Maybe he has that. So you might be praying, Lord, send out laborers into your harvest field. Send out workers. And instead, maybe you should be praying, Lord, am I one of those? You might not think of yourself as a youth leader because you're not comfortable with a whistle around your neck and leading games and getting up and telling jokes in front of people or whatever. But you have something that God can use in the life of a teenager. Maybe you're a financial wizard guy or girl who really can make sense of money. And the youth leader at this church probably isn't. And could use your help. Or maybe you can sponsor a couple of kids to go on the mission trip. But don't just write the check. Get to know those kids and help them in their walk with Christ. And then hear their results, their reports when they come back from that thing. Or maybe you're an auntie who really knows how to bake. And you can bake real goodies for the youth group to have after their meetings. But what if you took a couple of kids under your wing and taught them to bake, but in the process got to know them and got to influence them to live for Christ? Whatever it is that you have to offer, maybe you have a house, maybe you can drive a van, maybe you have a skill, whatever it is, God can use you as a worker in this harvest field. So when you pray that maybe, Lord, is it me that you're looking to send out into your harvest field? So pray. And I have to tell you, if you do get involved in youth ministry, it is completely worth it. Maybe not immediately. Because teenagers are transient by nature, they may not immediately respond or realize the results of what you're doing in and through and around them. But you will find out later. I've been doing youth ministry 45 years. That's like 310 dog years. That's a long time. And every once in a while, I get what I call a pension check. I don't have a pension. I have no retirement fund. I have an escape room business we just started this year to do that, hopefully. But every once in a while, I'll get a message from somebody from a long ago. That's usually starts out, you may not remember me, but that kind of thing. In fact, I just got one a couple of weeks ago from a girl that I recognize her name, but I can't place her face. I don't know who she is. I can't remember her. She was from our youth ministry in Arlington, Texas in the early 80s. And she wrote me this. Good afternoon. In our weekly prayer call with my team this morning, we were challenged to express gratitude to the people in our lives who were instrumental in us coming to know Christ. I was at Pantego Bible Church when you were the youth pastor there, so I wanted to say thank you and how grateful I am that you shared the gospel with us boldly and faithfully and made being together as Christians fun as well. It has been my guiding force through good times and bad, and I'm very thankful for you. It's worth it to know that you have influenced somebody's life while the cement is still wet on the foundation of their life. You can make impressions that last a lifetime. Let's pray. Father, we are so good to allow us to participate with you in shaping young lives. Thank you for Kauai Christian Fellowship. Thank you for the efforts and the creativity and the drive to reach teenagers that it has and the model it is for churches around the world. And I'm asking that you would send out some workers from this room into your harvest field of youth ministry. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you, Ken. He pulled a Dane. That's what we call pull a Dane when you choke up in the middle. Yeah. So you're going, okay, what's this all about? Are you guys in a recruiting thing? Always. But what it's more about is what you do has consequences. There are people that you've invested your life and your time with that you have no idea how important and valuable that was. And they might be little ones, they might be teenagers, they might be neighbors. What we do as believers has consequences, and you can see where we put a lot of our investment. Would you stand with me? May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you. May he give you peace. Go in Jesus. Amen.